What's going on, everybody? Episode 88. 88 miles per hour. We're going 88 miles per hour today because it's episode 88. This is Jon Does, and we're back with another episode of 90's Nostalgia. And before we get into that real quick, I just want to let everybody know, Dinosaur.com. It's the best place to support this channel. You want to see me keep doing these things? I need to make some money. I need to sell some t-shirts. I need to sell some sweatshirts. I should do underwear. Thong underwear for men. I'm just kidding. I won't do that. Maybe. I don't know. No one's saying I can't. No one's saying I can't. I don't know, Ryan, what do you think? Should I do thong underwear? Little wild dinosaur logo right there on the crotch area. Ryan's back.
Why not Bic lighters?
Bic lighters. That would be great. That would be great. I need to check to see. My store does stuff. They do random products, but it's hard for me to keep up doing updating all of the clothing all the time. So I do keep it kind of basic. But Bic lighters would be cool. I would love to have Bic lighters. I was doing a photo series for a while where I was taking pictures of Bic lighters that I have collected. I don't know what I'm going to do with those, but they're cool. There's some good ones in there. Some ones with like tacos and margaritas on there. It's great. I love my Bic lighters. Bic lighters, you want to sponsor the channel? That would be fantastic. Ryan, you need some lighters. Let's get Bic on this.
From Bic? Yeah,
let's go.
Absolutely.
Let's go. Lifetime supply. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm well. I'm grateful to be dry, warm.
Yeah, you didn't wash away?
No, not yet.
That's good, because these atmospheric rivers that we talked about last week have turned into physical floods. And I'm pretty good here. How are you there? Is it's you haven't washed away, but is your community washed away?
Not so much. Not yet. It's on its way. Sidewalks are flooding. There were hailstones the size of M&Ms.
Wow.
Both regular and peanut. Just all over the place.
Oh man. Well, I'm glad you're safe. I haven't gotten hail here in a long time, where I'm at in SoCal. But
and in the past week, lightning has struck downtown Berkeley several times.
Ooh. Anybody get hurt?
No.
Okay, that's good. We've got some thunder and lightning here, but I haven't heard of any strikes anywhere. So that's good. I'm glad, if anybody listening is dealing with any of this stuff, you should probably go deal with that instead of listening to the show. Unless you're here just to escape for a little bit. That's great too. We welcome the escapist attitude here as well. But so this week we are doing another record review, I guess. They're more than reviews, because we talk about some of the technical stuff behind it and how we feel, but we also talk about where we were, how we absorbed this kind of all of these records we've listened to. Well, the first one was a single, but Space Hog, Bush, and today we're talking about Ween. We were talking about the Mollusk, which is a fantastic record. Came out, what was it, June 24th, 1997?
1997.
97. I was in junior high at the time. I'll just throw that out there. And so I'll start off by saying I wasn't completely aware of this band. I'd heard of them through auxiliary sources. If you heard, I watched a lot of MTV as a kid when they still played music. And they did interviews with musicians and stuff like that. So I remember seeing, I mean, I don't know if it was specifically Kurt Cobain, but just like people in the auxiliary space. I remember, I think it was like maybe King Buzzo or something. I remember saying something about being on tour with Ween. So I didn't really get into them until later in life. But Ryan, you were, I'm just going to put words in your mouth here for a second. You were awaiting this record. I don't know if you were waiting for this record or not, but you were there day one, correct?
Yep. And my friends and I were all waiting for it. Chomping at the bit, even.
Do you mind if I ask
Should
you?
we start off with no, please?
I was actually going to say, so I don't want to blow up your spot here or anything like that. I did mention I was in junior high in 1997. Where were you in 97? Were you in school still? Were you traveling? Because I know you traveled a bit at a certain point in your life.
Yeah. On June 24th, 1997, I was at my parents' house in White Lake, Michigan. I would have been home from summer break. School for me was 45 minutes away.
Oh, okay.
And that doesn't sound like much.
Wait,
and it is.
High school? College? What?
College.
Gotcha. Okay.
U of M, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right. So, well, it may have been, it may as well have been in another country. White Lake and Ann Arbor were so different, you know. In both columns, you know, pros and cons. And I just couldn't, what can I say, man? I came from a small town. I didn't have many friends. I came from a small family. And so getting back to that environment was vital to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I was working with my dad that summer. My dad's in HVAC, and I worked at his shop. At that point in time, they were putting their existing records into a computer database. Mm-hmm. This has absolutely nothing to do with Ween. I understand that.
I asked you. I asked. Let's go. Let's hear it.
And so I went up to this second floor of that heating and cooling shop. It's called Zilka Heating and Cooling. Mm-hmm. Floors were just bare particle board. The walls were just really studs. Okay? There were no walls. And I had this place maybe about 20 feet away from the staircase coming up. I sat back there with all of the carbon copies they had left over from all of their clients and work over the years. And I started entering that into their database, and then I trained a couple other people on it, and then I was out of there. So it really was a true summer break for me.
Yeah, yeah. That go home for the summer and work and hang out with your friends. Spend all your money on Ween records.
And so I had the day off when the Mollusk dropped, and my friend Ryan came to pick me up, and wow, I mean, I'd been listening to Ween for a few years. We all had.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan was just about to marry his longtime girlfriend. She and one of her friends found Push the Little Daisies to be hilarious.
Okay.
They heard it on the radio. They bought the tape. And they were like, oh, my God, this is really good. And so that tape was passed around between us. And I didn't know what to make of Dear Guava when I first heard it. But then Chocolate and Cheese came out, and I was like, oh, wow. And then 12 Golden Country Greats came out. And I was like, oh, that's something. And the Mollusk came out, and everything kind of changed with that.
So, one of the things I had here you kind of got into was when did you get into them? So that when did you hear that first tape with what was it, Pushing the Daisies?
Spring of '93.
93. Okay. So yeah, the Mollusk would have been about 4 years later. So you'd had plenty of time to absorb them. What was your first favorite Ween record in that era? Was it Pure Guava?
Pure Guava was, if I can describe the back cover to you, it's a shot of a gathering of people. Aaron Freeman and Mickey Melchiando's friends, basically, all got together at this house, and they took a picture. This community, and there's like a fake pregnant lady drinking for one.
Oh yeah.
I think at the time I was I thought it was kind of trashy, assuming they were poor. There were a lot of cigarettes around, a lot of Budweisers in the picture. The place looks kind of dilapidated.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't come from a wealthy family, but I mean, we were working class, and my parents weren't divorced, and everything was kind of together, And I saw that picture as kind of, I mean, I took it at face value, That was like a hard luck scene,
Yeah.
And these guys were putting this music together, and some of it was just gorgeous, and some of it was just hellish and indecipherable. You couldn't understand what was being said. You weren't sure you wanted to. It sounded like there were a couple of planes crash landing in a field full of riding mowers.
Yeah.
It got creepy. And you look again at that picture, and you're like, well, that's that environment, right? Spring Theme that would be the first Ween song that really took me. That was on Pure Guava.
Okay.
But as the listens piled up to other records, there were always, on the first listen at least, songs that just jumped right out at you. And then there were others that jumped, some of them jumped right out at you and hugged you, and some of them jumped right out at you and tried to bite your nose off.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Sorry, forgive me. I'm blowing my nose currently. Continue though. I'm listening.
I didn't exactly hear them in order.
Sure.
What I heard was kind of contingent on what my friends were able to pick up, and you weren't. Godween, Satan, The Pod, those were not always readily available, depending on where you lived.
Yeah.
And so you just didn't have the chance to hear them.
So you had either your friends, like, you know, mixtapes and stuff like that, or what was the radio station you mentioned in previous weeks that you...
You know, I heard Push the Little Daisies on 89X.
Oh, okay, 89X, that was it.
I've never heard any other Ween on the radio off of, like, college stations. Yeah.
Okay, so what do we know about Ween? I'm asking this because I know a little bit about who they are. I know Gene and Dean Ween is not their real names, as you mentioned already.
Yeah.
So what do you know about them? Because you're a little bit more. You have a longer history with the band than I do.
It's, you know, it comes out of that friendship from back home.
I did read something that they started off a 2-piece with a drum machine, correct?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's a lot there to unpack. They started out in 1984. They were kids.
Yeah.
Junior high, something like that. Typing class. They started making music. They traded tapes. They got the best gear they could. There was a Tascam 4-track involved. There was an Alesis SR16 involved.
Love that drum machine. Both of them. The 16 and the 18 are both great. I like them both for various reasons.
The 16 is on, I think it's on Godwin Satan. It's on the Pod. It's on Pure Guava. It's on Chocolate and Cheese. It's on the Mollusk.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know which drum machine, but I could figure out. I mean, it was kind of apparent in certain tracks that there was drum machine on the Mollusk. We'll get into that.
That dumpster hitting the pavement on Johnny on the Spot is totally the SR16.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned it.
We might be. They got their start. Using boom boxes to record their stuff. Their beginnings were as humble as you can get. They just had a commitment to, like, finishing songs and improving upon them. And their gear just kept getting better and better, and there was really no going back. But I didn't appreciate them quite as much when I was younger, listening to those 4-track recordings. But that's like 2 of their albums right there.
Yeah.
And we're talking, a lot of that stuff was direct in. There are mistakes all over them. They break out laughing. I mean, they're just wonderful. The guy who mixed and mastered them is named Andrew Weiss. He was a member of the band for a while. And as much as it is about Dean and Gene Ween, they've had some long-time collaborators.
Okay.
And so Andrew Weiss, for instance, their first record was recorded at his place. And those were songs they'd been sawing away at for a while. They took them over to his place, recorded them in his living room. I think that record wound up on Twin Tone.
Is that the Godwin Satan, the Oneness?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And that sounds okay. That sounds pretty good. It's hilarious. It's all over the place. It's a wonderful record. But when they got that 4-track and got into using that 4-track, they started to produce a work that had a consistency to it. You know, and they were good about arranging it. They gave it back to Andrew Weiss, and he made it sound. I've been at it for about 17 years now, trying to make 4-track recordings that sound as good as Andrew Weiss made those tapes sound.
Yeah.
At some point, Elektra heard the pod, which was, I mean, I didn't hear the pod when it came out, but some real tastemakers and trendsetters were into it. And Elektra, yeah, picked up Pure Guava, published their 4-track album. After that, they were like, we'll set you up for 4 records in the studio. And then came Chocolate and Cheese. And that was, I was easily impressed by studio tricks and expensive recording equipment, you know, and I gravitated toward that. What the Mollusk offered was a complete, cohesive experience. And that was just at such a higher level than anything they had produced up until that point. You could have knocked me over with a feather.
Yeah, so the Mollusk is basically I've probably listened to some other stuff, and not known that I was listening to Ween. But the Mollusk is probably the one record I've listened to of theirs. It's the only one I know I've listened to all the way through. I don't know that I've listened to much other stuff outside of this. Well, I mean, look, when I was in who was it? I think there was a friend of mine from college. I think would bring up Ween every once in a while. I honestly can't remember when I decided to jump into it, but there's I think Mutilated Lips was the you mentioned earlier that kind of just hit you. I forget how you phrased it, but that just kind of hits you and sticks with you. That's what happened with me with Mutilated Lips, to be quite honest, is I heard that, and that's like the only song I listened to from them for the longest time, because it is so good, in my opinion. Let's see. Because we both listened to this, I listened to this record extensively over the last week. It was a mix between that and Battles, because I'm working on refining an older version of my musical style, and Battles is a big part of that. So I've made sure to listen to the Mollusk on multiple occasions when I was walking around doing, chores or whatever, driving places. I'd throw it on and listen to it as much as I could. And I've listened to this record quite a lot now. But when you do now, do you go back to, let's see, how do I want to phrase this? When you re-listened to this, in modern times, we've talked about Ween, at various stages in our conversations throughout our friendship. When you listen to this now, do you get that nostalgia of like that summer, for example, of being home from college? Do you have new memories attached to this, or do you just take it in new every time? Because sometimes we're able to do that. Like sometimes I put records down for a really long time and then come back to them later, and whatever stories, emotions, experiences I've had in my life, they kind of aren't attached so much anymore. I've done that with a handful of things, which is great because, you know, sometimes music gets attached to, like, for example, old relationships that aren't a part of our lives anymore, things like that. Do you go back to any of those stuff when you listen to this? I'm genuinely curious about that because I think nostalgia. Well, this is the nostalgia episode, you know. But yeah, how does that sit with you?
Not well. Not well. I followed Ween's music up until June 24th, 1997.
Okay.
But that summer and what followed, I stepped through a door, man, that you can't really I'll bet you I smoked pot for the first time within 2 weeks of when the Mollusk dropped.
Okay. Formative years.
It was just before I turned 21, and I had been so good. I had been so good about not drinking, about not really doing anything wrong, really. And I'd been at school for a couple of years, and I was like, you know, I know who's smoking joints and who's not, and I can handle smoking a joint, at least. So I started doing that. For anyone that hasn't and is considering trying pot or alcohol or really much of anything for the first time, there's no going back. And you want to consider that. I'm not advocating anyone doing anything.
Don't do anything illegal.
Me, definitely not illegal. And at the time, it surely was. In my time and place, it was illegal. Outside of Ann Arbor, it was illegal. Mm-hmm. It had been decriminalized in Ann Arbor for decades at that point. You know, but all the same, I never let Ween go. I mean, there are a lot of bands I picked up in the 90s. There are a lot of bands I picked up in my childhood that I've just never let go. I've purchased the Mollusk probably 5 or 6 times because it's had to have been replaced because of theft or damage. The place I was living for a couple of years was especially hard on CDs because we listened to them so often, and oftentimes, you know, someone would trying to change a CD at 4 a.m. after 12 beers, and they're just not careful like they should be, right?
Yeah. I was actually going to ask what medium, was it CD or vinyl or cassette, but probably all of them at various stages, right? CDs mostly, I'm assuming.
I would have, mostly CDs. I'd say 10-1, 9-1. If there was something, there was still stuff back then you just couldn't get on CD. So I had a lot of 7 inches and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I remember those.
That was how I played it at that point in time. So I took the Mollusk to Taiwan with me. I'm going to need you to put that incense out. Okay. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Put the incense out. Thank you. The incense gets a bit strong in here.
Miss Hudson's on the line.
That is Mrs. Hudson.
There you go.
Does she want to jump on and talk about the mollusk?
It'd be nice if I started talking about the mollusk, eh?
Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it. We still have half hour, so.
It's, what is it? It's probably like November of 2003 or something,
Sure.
and I'm standing in a classroom in Daegu, which is a borough of Taipei. And there are about a dozen or so 4-year-olds circling a circle of chairs, and I'm playing them Polka Dot Tail and The Golden Eel and basically everything that isn't profanity laden on that record.
Yeah. Awesome.
Years later, I came back from the bookstore on my lunch break, and there was an advertisement for Plains Recordings. They were releasing the Mollusk 12 Golden Country Greats in white pepper in a box set on vinyl. I bought it without another thought.
Yeah.
It would have been the last time I bought the Mollusk, as a matter of fact.
All right.
I listen to Ween once a week. I haven't listened to the Mollusk. I gave it a quick listen for the purposes of an A and B for our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, I don't listen to any Ween records anymore. It's all. I've gone full deadhead on this, and I just listen to their live shows. That's kind of where I am.
I love that. We've gone full deadhead on it. So what's your Ween show, huh? You know about that, right? The whole, like, there's so many Grateful Dead shows that the fan base is like, what's your Dead show? And it's like, what show on your birthday was it? Was it like Japan, September 18th, 1984? That's your show, man. Anyways, sorry, continue.
No, I think that's an excellent place to sort of reassess where we're at in this conversation.
All right.
What time is it, man?
It's 6:34. We got like 25-30 minutes still.
Yeah. So no, unlike Space Hog and Bush, there's no nostalgia for Ween to me. I wrote Aaron Freeman a letter around Christmas in 2012, and he responded.
Wow.
The guy wrote me a letter on Christmas.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
What
was it about? What was the letter about?
A lot of chickens had come home to roost for me at that point. Things were going on in my life. I was so unhappy. Heartbroken even. I could feel it in my chest, all right?
Mm-hmm.
During this time, Ween was breaking up, and it was hilarious. And it was this perfect distraction to my pain.
Mm-hmm.
And after the dust had settled, I got to feeling bad about that. And I thought, because it seemed at the time that Aaron Freeman was was in a very vulnerable place, and he was making himself like available to the people,
Forgive me, real quick.
in a very real way.
Aaron Freeman
would be Gene Ween.
Okay. And Mickey is Dean Ween, correct?
Is how that one works.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, they were breaking up, and you were going through some heartache yourself. That's a kind of a serendipitous, I guess not serendipitous, but I guess it's, the universe aligned. And even though it was over terrible things or, sad things or whatever, that's really cool that he did respond to you. I don't think that's a thing
I
that...
apologized for relishing in his misery, but offered that it was just a distraction to my own, and what I told him was, and this kind of goes back to the photograph on the back of Pure Guava, their music always struck me as real.
Yeah.
More often than not, I knew where they were coming from. And it was just the kind of outpouring, gushing, slobbering fandom that I think any celebrity with two brain cells left to rub together, would despise.
Yeah.
And he was very gracious about it. And it really meant a lot to me. It still does. As a matter of fact.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And it's funny that you brought that up, not to go too off subject, but that's not something that totally happens anymore. If you want to reach out to like a celebrity of some, not to say he was a huge celebrity or anything like that, but like, known in certain circles or whatever, most people just like tweet or like at somebody in like social media, and like you might get a response, but I think, that's even more, for lack of a better term, romantic. The fact that you have a letter from Gene Ween. That's really cool. That's actually really cool.
Just as an aside,
yeah.
Man, almost every celebrity to me that I've ever had the courage to reach out to has responded to me. So, people, if the people you love aren't acknowledging your fan mail, I'm not advocating anything, but consider that. To the people you admire, take the time to acknowledge that they read your your email.
Yeah. Well, since we've talked about how quickly time goes sometimes.
Let me tell you about Mutilated Lips, John B., and how it's a textbook study in how to properly record a Fender jazz bass with a maple fretboard.
Are you trying to tell me something?
No.
Because there's one right behind me.
I'm telling you that last week I had a thing or two to say about the proper way to use a Fender jazz bass with a maple fretboard, and I would like to present a positive example of that. That's how it's done.
I'm not
as opposed to Bush's 16 stone.
Yeah,
which I was not. I don't think I was unduly hard on it.
No, I don't think so either. But I will also say, even though I think out of the two of us last week with Bush, I was probably the more of the Bush fan, I guess, when it came to 16 Stone. I will say, I do think the Mollusk is a much better record overall.
Well,
yeah, for various reasons, not just the grungy, aspect of Bush's era. The Mollusk, real quick. I'm gonna get into this record because I'm not as familiar with them. You've brought up, they've got a varying degree of songs per album. This one, I've brought up in the past King Gizzard and how what was it? One of their last ones, Omnium Gatherum, felt like a mixtape. It felt like it sounds like a King Gizzard record, but each song feels like from a different stage of of, you know, records. Like a lot of them, some of them are B-sides from certain records. But the Mollusk also does that to me a bit, where this feels like a mixtape that they're making for their friends or family or, you know, fans, stuff like that too. Because there's a I mean, I guess the album, the construction of an album is not a bygone thing, but people are putting out singles more. You know, albums do come out, but also when I do hear a lot of new albums, a lot of the times it's just like 8 to 10 or 12 or 14 or however many tracks are on that of the same, if not a similar vibe song. And that's not you know, a general rule. It's just something I pick up in my, this is my little anecdotal thing about records. But it does, the Mollusk feels like that. It, you know, it starts off dancing in the show tonight, little piano tune. You know, I feel gross listening to that song because I don't know. I don't know if you'll catch this reference, but it kind of reminds me of an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But ultimately, it starts off this little ditty, and then you start getting into more a varying degree of songs. You've got some slower, darker sounding tunes. You got some faster, like Johnny on the Spot. I remember listening to that the first time. It was after I started. It was after I really kind of, for myself, discovered Ween. Not just heard about them in passing, but when I was listening to them myself. And it's the next song after Mutilated Lips, so I was like, all right, cool. Let's just listen to see what's going on. And it didn't catch me initially because it's real fast, guitar riff. And it didn't capture my attention initially. Mutilated Lips absolutely did that to me. But you get a like I keep saying, varying degree of things. There's some like ballad like songs on here. There's some
Cold Blows the Wind.
Yes. The other one I wanted to bring up too. There's a handful of songs that I really, really enjoy. I like most of this record. Like I said, I prefer this record more over 16 Stone. I'm not playing the like game of like what's better. I'm just, for our viewers, they've seen 3 episodes so far. Last episode was a full record, so just in comparison to the episodes that we've put out, I think this record is something that I listen to a little bit more. But Pink Eye,
Pink Eye on My Leg.
Yes, that guitar is beautiful. I love the sound of the guitars on that. Just real serene.
We'll call that a close approximation to Diener's clean and creamy tone. All right.
Okay.
And they've got a lot of mid-tempo mellow jams with that vibe throughout their catalog. Spring Theme being one of them. Excuse me. They go into that mode, that laid-back, dreamy mode, live often. And they'll do it. Yeah, you can expect multiple passages. Excuse me. Yeah, you can still expect multiple passages like that throughout every show they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. They do that really well. The one good part about seeing the Dean Ween group, the Royal Oak Music Theater in October 2016 was, apart from the Meat Men, the Meat Puppets.
Meat Puppets. the Meat Men.
The Meat Puppets opened for them and stole the show, basically.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But Dean Ween, Ween was still broken up at the time. Or they had like patched it up, but they still needed to do solo stuff.
Yeah.
I forget which it was.
Very similar to New Pants.
After all those years, I finally got to hear at least half of Ween do Pink Eye on My Leg live.
Sweet.
And it was a high point of the show. It was a high point of, my Ween concert going career.
If I may ask,
please,
do you have favorites from this record? Do you have go-tos, or is this one of those things that if you have the Mollusk, you're just gonna listen to the whole thing, or do you have specifics you go to?
I listened to. You have to understand, the Mollusk was so good. I made everybody listen to it. My parents listened to that song. Excuse me. Well, they listened to the Mollusk, and I would fast forward a couple of songs.
Yeah.
Pink Eye on My Leg was the safe one. The Blarney Stone and Waving My Dick in the Wind, not so much.
Yeah. I liked the way you mentioned something the other day when we were talking about this. They're a funny band, but they are not a joke band. And I think that is a very appropriate statement for this, because I listened to, like 2/3 of this record, and I'm like really emotionally attached to some of it. And I was even having my own, emotional crises while listening to some of the lyrics. And then you get Johnny on the Spot, Waving My Dick in the Wind, the Kiss in the Blarney Stone. And, sorry, I think I said,
man, Johnny on the Spot is as heavy as a death in the family.
Yeah.
I mean, the subject matter, the character, it's a duet. This character with two voices is in a tough spot, man. I mean, a Chevy with a Mopar cam? Look out.
I guess I was assuming that Johnny on the Spot was a porta potty. But that song
means I'll be your right-hand man. I got your back, homie. Get me out of this life. I need something.
Yeah, that is pretty dark.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's a silly song, man.
Yeah,
and it's good. But if you just, too many people I knew at the time dismissed them as a joke, and I was like, well, listen to this. And people weren't brought to tears, man, but they know joy when they hear it.
Yeah.
Sorrow. There's a lot of emotion invested in these records. And the Mollusk does a good job of showcasing all of that. Look, for a time it was my favorite Ween record. For a time, I would argue, until I'd finished the whole case, and it was 4 a.m., and I had to change the CDs, and I'd argue the Mollusk was the best Ween record ever. I don't necessarily feel that way now. But, it's one of the few great rock records released in my lifetime. Our lifetimes, I feel. Like great rock?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The Mollusk, for sure. In the tradition of like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, 100%. There they are. Well, I mean,
I'm going to relate that to when I was discovering like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and things like that. There was, I think less with Led Zeppelin, more with Pink Floyd and some of the other like psychedelic bands of the time. But there's an attachment to different drugs that there's so many people that have like gotten stoned or eaten mushrooms or taken LSD or whatever and gone to those like laser light shows, those Pink Floyd laser light shows. You're like, whoa, The Wall or Dark Side of the Moon or whatever. this record, it was heavily influenced, from what I understand, by mushrooms and LSD in the writing process behind this.
Mickey Melchiano says so himself. It's cool. I mean, if I'm being honest, that would have been that October. I would have gotten my hands on some psychedelics, and it was the best thing I'd ever done for myself. I'm not advocating anything.
Yeah, don't do drugs. Don't do drugs.
Don't
kid.
do drugs. I did the best in school then that I'd ever done.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Truth. I'm not advocating anything.
Yeah.
I was a mediocre student before then, and I really was able to kind of get myself out of the equation and kind of get out of my own way.
Yeah.
And I started writing some really good papers, and I really started listening and really started reading and allowing myself to be open. I talked about some of the frightening songs on Pure Guava after I had stepped through that door. I returned to those scary, noisy, belligerent, stupid records, and they were no less noisy, belligerent, and stupid, but
there was a new attachment or understanding of them.
Again, you just look at what they say about themselves. Their first record is God, Ween, Satan, the Oneness. Okay?
Yeah.
And to back them up, both of those guys are very literary. Mickey has talked about wanting to be a journalist. Mickey writes a lot, tries to write a lot, though I don't think he's the primary songwriter of Ween by a damn sight.
Yeah.
Aaron kind of lays low, but Mickey's kind of out there constantly, and I mean that in a good way. Look, the thing about when I said everything changed with the Mollusk, it's not just about me taking drugs for the first time. It's also about, like, I think the internet was probably privatized in 95. Okay?
Yeah.
94, there were all those AOL discs, stuff like that. Okay?
Oh, man, I remember those.
Right?
Getting those in the mail, upgrading every month or whatever. Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Come 97 with the Mollusk, suddenly, Ween shows are up online, and people get it together. And Ween was an early adopter of the internet, and it was wicked. They promoted, I don't want to say they promoted the bootleggings of their shows, but many of their shows are recorded.
Yeah.
I think there are nearly 1,000 soundboard recordings of their shows. And right now, last I checked, I know they topped 1,000 shows sometime back.
Yeah. Damn.
That's 1,000 shows by Ween. That's the thing. I loved the Mollusk. It's one of the best, the greatest. I said greatest, didn't I?
Yeah.
Greatest rock records released in my lifetime. I'll stand by that, okay? If you look at their discography, half of it is live stuff. They are so good live. They are so good live.
They're
so good live.
They're touring
over
again,
half their
right?
discography. Oh yeah.
Okay.
They are.
They've reconciled to a degree enough to.
They reconciled a while ago. They're not making any new records.
Yeah, they're
just
touring off the old stuff.
Here's the thing. The Mollusk was the last good Ween record. Oh. Quebec was the last good Ween record. The Mollusk was the last great Ween record.
Gotcha. Just real quick, I have one small aside, and then I'm going to move on a little bit because we only have a couple minutes left. We have like 5 minutes left. see, these go fast. Going back to the whole drug thing, we're in a different era of music these days. And look, again, kids, don't do drugs. But I will say, music is a little bit better when it's under the influence of hallucinogens than it is, like, I don't know, cough syrup, for example. I feel like, and I'm not calling anybody out specifically, but we live in an era where there's a lot of, like, hip-hop rap music that's, like, lean and all this stuff, and I'm not going to get into all the stuff, but it feels a little bit lazy to me. The hallucinogenic albums usually have a little bit more. You're expanding your brain when you're doing these things. You're diving into your subconscious and cleaning out some of those deep parts of your brain that you don't usually get to. And I think, again, don't do drugs. But I do feel like there is something a little bit more substantial versus some of, like, the albums made on drugs in the past versus, like, the last 10, 15 years, 20 years maybe, where the, like, I don't know. There's been different drugs in a lot of eras in music, and it's a whole different conversation, but I don't know. If you're gonna do drugs and you're gonna make music, do the right drugs when you're making music.
You asked me if I have a favorite song.
Yes.
Off of the Mollusk.
Yeah.
This will pass. Let me answer that question.
Sure.
After so many minutes. It's the Golden Eel.
Okay. That's a great song.
It's
a really
about
great
doing
song.
psychedelics with a pet. And I am behind that 100%. I'll advocate that. Kids, if you're going to do psychedelics, have a trusted pet nearby.
Yes.
Let them talk you down.
At least have a good babysitter. Pets can be good ones.
Let me throw this at you. Let me throw a couple Ween facts at you that you might not pick up elsewhere.
Let's do it.
This would go under the rubric of kids.
Okay.
Kids, don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs.
If you look at their recording sessions and when stuff is released, they take a lot of breaks when they're making records, it seems. They took a break for the Mollusk. They kick songs down the road for years. They'd been playing Buckingham Green for a long, long time.
It's a good one.
Before they recorded it to the Mollusk. But, like, when they did the Mollusk, the sessions for the Mollusk, they also did the Argus, which wound up on Quebec. So, from 94, when they got the money to do Chocolate and Cheese, to, let's see here. Yeah. The end of the decade, 2000. They put out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8 albums based on about 4 years worth of work. Starting in 94.
That's crazy.
They had records coming out, I was expecting 12 Golden Country Greats. I was expecting the Mollusk. What none of us knew was they had released a record with the Boredoms.
Boredoms is great.
A couple years before, called Z-Rock Hawaii. After hearing the Mollusk, a buddy of mine turned me on to Z-Rock Hawaii. He hadn't heard the Mollusk. So we were both like, hey, have you heard the new Ween? And we were both like, what? Yeah, but this ain't it. Oh, no, it's not. Check this out. Oh, my God. It's wonderful. It was wonderful.
You mentioning Boredoms brought me back to the whole Battles conversation earlier, because I from Boredoms does vocals on a Battles track on one of their records. But hey, It's 7:01. Do you have more you want to talk about? You want to get going here? What do you feel?
Let me finish those things about Ween.
Yeah, let's do it.
Messy recording and release schedules. You know?
Mm-hmm.
They were early adopters of the internet. It facilitated some trading. It really solidified their fan base. Dean Ween made it a point to keep a tour diary and interact with people online. Still does. Great job of it.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, and the other thing was they've, as much as any other band, have hyped themselves up as a live act, and they are a live act. And I've seen them five or six times now, and they always put on the kind of show that gradually incorporates the material, and they know the fans are there to hear their music. They take requests at the drop of a hat. They encourage people to sing along.
Mm-hmm.
Their albums, their studio albums, are so good. So good. But please, people, check out a Ween live show. Anywhere, by any means necessary. Do it.
That's actually kind of how I was gonna end this show. Is I was gonna ask you, especially because I have not had like the most intense deep dive with Ween, but I do appreciate Ween quite a bit. I do really like the Mollusk record a lot. But if you were to recommend one other studio record to somebody, me or anybody
the
listening,
Pod, hands down.
The Pod.
The Pod is just. The Pod is the beginning, middle, and end of Ween to me. That would be my favorite Ween studio record.
Okay.
Easily. They go everywhere. It gets nasty. People listening, you should know these are not bad men necessarily. They've had some struggles with substance abuse and the like, but listen to a good Ween record. Listen to any Ween record, and just be aware of how you feel. You know, ask yourself, how is this making me feel?
Don't do drugs.
Queasy, elated, tingly. It's good. It's good art that elicits a physiological response. You know.
Yeah.
Forget about your emotions, just your feelings. How does your body feel in the presence of this music? You know. Give her a listen.
All right. So the Pod is a secondary recommendation from Ryan.
It's not as important as the Mollusk. It just isn't.
Would you say the Mollusk is?
It's going to scare more people away than not.
Did the Mollusk? Was the Mollusk like their most commercial record?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That's tough to say. Nobody reviewed it. I mean, their press was lousy when they hooked up with the South Park guys.
Yeah.
That was pretty high profile.
Yeah,
they were.
Yeah, I completely. I whenever I think of South Park, I just think Primus because the theme song and everything. But yeah, I forgot they have a connection there with the South Park guys. I asked that only because whenever I hear Ween in general, just from like randos on the internet or whoever, it's always the Mollusk that gets brought up. So that's why I was maybe just assuming there that might have been their most commercial. From what I know,
it really is the one that rules the roost, man. And
Okay.
There's no denying how. Oh, right. Let me throw one more thing at you.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
the first copy of the Mollusk I purchased was a used promotional copy from Encore Recordings in Ann Arbor, Michigan. All right?
All right.
This promotional copy was an alternate mix intended for UK
Cool.
publications. And so early on, there was this weird thing happening where I'd swear I was hearing different mollusks depending on whose copy I was listening to.
Is it because when Waving Your Dick in the Wind came on, it was waving your sausage and beans in the wind?
No. It's more like the vocals are way more present.
Okay.
So I A and B'd that promotional copy that I had with, well, what I've got now. And I think that UK mix was better. I think the UK mix was better. I'll just come right out and say it. The vocals were more present. The flange, there's a lot of flange on that record. The guitars were higher in the mix. The percussion just was knocking. Loved it. And then that was destroyed. That wound up under the couch, and we had to move the couch. And when we put the couch back down, it wound up on that CD, and I had to buy another copy. And the whole time I'm listening to the other copy, I'm like, man, this just doesn't sound the same. And they're like, you're crazy. That promotional copy had different artwork, slightly different color scheme. Better mix.
Oh man, honestly, there was a lot of stuff we could talk about still. Maybe we'll save this for another conversation of just talking about music in general, or
return to the Mollusk.
I'm
sorry.
No. Don't be.
There's a lot that's been said that's just not been about the Mollusk.
Tonight? No, I think there's been plenty. I think there's other areas we could have gotten into more, like technical stuff, and there's a couple of things there. The vocals on Mutilated Lips still kind of baffle me a little bit. There's I guess it was recorded, then reversed, then flipped backwards again. And the vocal effects, not that there's like an effects process or anything, but the things they do to their vocals throughout the whole record are really interesting. And as somebody who used to cover up vocals with a lot of effects, because I'm not a very comfortable singer, very good singer, and I'm kind of going back to effects a little bit, but in a little bit more thought out process. I listened to this and was like, the reverse thing that they did on those Mutilated Lips vocals is one of my favorite things I've ever heard vocally. I think it's at this point, it's, people have done tricks like that, but
you're talking about the pre-delay on I lick my brain in silence.
Yeah, there is like a reverse ramping thing going on there. That I looked up, and I don't know. You'll listen to Wild Dinosaur. You might hear some of that in the future. But look, let's wrap this up. Because we could talk about technical stuff all day long about all kinds of records. To be honest, the mixing in this is great.
There's a lot to be said for how the Mollusk was put together, but at the end of the day, it was time and familiarity with songcraft and recording. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
That, and they had, succumbed to a certain magic. But look, if I think anything less of the Mollusk now, it's only because I've become aware after the fact of what else they were kicking around at the time. And I'm just like, my God, because there are some great songs they just kicked away. And I wonder sometimes,
Yeah.
What if they had left Did You See Me in there and taken out Waving My Dick in the Wind?
Yeah.
Admittedly, those up-tempo numbers give you a break.
Yeah. I think they're in the grand scheme of the album. It is nice to get those breaks in there. Because I think if there was, a lot of, if the whole record was ballady, like mushroomed ballads written under the influence of mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, and not to say that all their songs are, but
whoa, that ballad isn't theirs. That's from the 17th century.
I just mean like they have some.
That's a traditional song.
Well, they have some like ballady kinds of things. I don't know. There's I guess just the pacing of the record needs those Johnny on the spots, waving your dick in the wind.
It's going to be all right is a real heartbreaker.
Yes. Yeah,
that's for sure.
That's on my list. Real quick, my couple of favorite tracks on this. I like the majority of this record. And even the songs I don't like that much, I still like. They're just like not up there, on my list. But the Mollusk itself is a really great song. Mutilated Lips is probably my all-time favorite Ween song so far. It's Gonna Be All Right and Ocean Man, I thought were really those songs really stuck out to me. Like I said, and the guitar tone on Pink Eye on My Leg as well. So those are some of my favorites. But so Ryan, your other recommendations, the pod, huh?
Oh, here's another one, because I actually did listen to a new Ween record and all of this kind of. On September 14th, 2001, okay, they had been planning to do this. Because of then current events, they thought they weren't going to be able to do this, but in the end, by some miracle, they were able to do this. They went to the New Hope, Pennsylvania, John and Peter's joint, and they performed God, Ween, Satan in its entirety. Live.
Awesome.
For that audience. And they released that as an official release. I think it's their last official release at the moment. And you don't need to know that it was recorded on September 14th, 2001 to appreciate that record, but that one's worth checking out.
All right.
That one's worth checking out. The thing about Ween, they were always able to convince me for the duration of a song. They were always able to rope me in somehow and believe in that little world, that little moment they captured.
Yeah.
And I think in that live show, they sort of demonstrate their mastery over that whole magic. I would recommend people listen to God, Ween, Satan live over God, Ween, Satan the studio record. Not even the studio, the living room record. God, Ween, Satan, the living roomness.
All right. Well, I think that's it. I think that's again we could go all day. I think you and I on technical stuff.
It's really best. It's really best that we save up for another time, another angle, perhaps.
Well, yeah, because I mean, not just specifically like this record, or but you and I have been recording music for a long time, so there's always things you could talk about like vocal mixes, guitar, just the whole album mix as a general, the whole album track list, stuff like that a little bit more. But I think we all get a better idea of who this band is and what the Mollusk is really about.
It's with the Mollusk, it's important to realize that the gear they had was they had some really nice gear, and for all intents and purposes, they kind of recorded it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
you know. Yeah, they had some help before, after Enduring, for sure.
Yeah.
But they started out with boomboxes, man.
Yeah, that's
started out with boomboxes, and by 10 years later, Elektra was, in spite of their obvious, irresponsible tendencies, Elektra, entrusted them with the money to finance 4 records. That's what made the 90s so cool. That guys like that wound up, they, for the most part, spent their money wisely. I mean, these guys have struggled financially over the past 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
but they still do what they do for a living.
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you being here for this. I like these episodes. These are fun.
It was fun, man.
You'll be back next week, right?
We're doing Jane's Addiction.
We'll do Jane's Addiction next week. We got some stuff.
This one's going to be easy because I was living at home too.
I guess I'll save it for next week, but I have a slightly more attachment to Jane's Addiction for a couple of reasons, but mostly because there was a connection to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, a little later on, but we'll talk about all that next week. We'll get there. Don't worry about it. But hey, Ryan, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I like these episodes a lot. I hope other people are enjoying these episodes. But yeah, we'll come back next week with the Jane's Addiction episode. Ryan, I'm gonna get going here. I'm gonna do my outro and end the episode. But I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Right on, man.
All right, have a good night. I'll talk to you later.
For sure.
Bye.
Peace out.
All right. So that was Ryan, my buddy Ryan Hudson on the phone. He's not on the phone anymore, so I'm gonna drop this. Here we go. Yeah, I really hope you guys are enjoying these 90s nostalgia episodes. We're kind of doing these because I don't want to speak for Ryan, but I'm getting older, and I like music, and I like talking about it, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm hoping younger kids are discovering some stuff through these episodes. Started off with the Space Hog one because we got the Guardians of the Galaxy movie coming out soon. That was in the trailer. But we got a lot of cool bands in the 90s. Some bands you might have heard of, some bands you might not have heard of. So we're gonna keep talking about these over the next couple of weeks, I guess. And I hope you guys tune in. I hope you guys are liking and subscribing. I was a little bummed. I said something the other day after the new year about I'm 1 subscriber away from 50. Well, I lost a subscriber, so I'm 2 away from 50. So starting 2023 off right, I guess. So we'll be back. I'll be back on Friday. I think Pat said he was gonna come hang out with me on Friday. I have a couple of I have some ideas for some episodes that I am working on. So hopefully these ideas of mine come to fruition in good ways, I guess. They'll be fun. Please subscribe, share these videos, comment on these videos. Let me know if you're a fan of Ween, if you've never heard of Ween before, and you listen to this, the Mollusk or the Pod or any of the live stuff or really anything. Come back and let me know what you think about it. This is really fun talking about. There's a little bit of there's not some, maybe the Bush record. I've rekindled some of my love for it, I guess. But it's nice to come through and listen to stuff that I'm not fully, I've listened to a lot of music. I don't always go into the deep dive in the history of bands and stuff like that. I do sometimes when I'm really, really into a band, but I never really did that with Ween. So if you guys learned something, if you guys think I should learn something, let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to check out wilddinosaur.com. It really is the best place to support this channel and me and what I'm doing here to give you guys my opinions on stuff that's going down. I really would love to expand the kinds of content I do in this channel. So really, really any sort of help. I don't have a Patreon. I have a Patreon. I don't have it public because I don't like to just ask for things without giving you something back. And so that's why the Wild Dinosaur shop is the best place to do that, is because it helps me out, helps you out. You get a cool piece of merch, t-shirts, sweatshirts, tote bags, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, go check out wilddinosaur.com. And the last thing I love to do, and I'll give a little bit extra to shout out today, Planned Parenthood. There's a link in the description below to donate to Planned Parenthood. I do believe they are one of the best organizations regarding healthcare, and they oftentimes get a lot of slack from various people these days, and healthcare sucks in the U.S., and Planned Parenthood offers a lot of family planning and reproductive information, family planning, stuff like that. So go check them out. I have donated to them, in case you were wondering, and I got my sticker in the mail earlier today, and they definitely have my middle name wrong, and I don't know why, because I filled out the information and I don't know why they think my middle name is Paul, because it's definitely not Paul. There's not even a P anywhere near my middle name. But anyways, that's what it is. But Planned Parenthood, regardless of you guys having my middle name wrong, I'm still a supporter. And hopefully you guys are too. So, yeah, check those out. Again, I will be back on Friday. I think Pat will be here. If not, then I'll have, something else fun planned. And, yeah, so anyways, I hope you guys have a good, rest of your night and a good Thursday tomorrow. It's getting close to the end of the week. And if you're experiencing any sort of, extreme weather, stay dry, stay warm, and, just be well. So I'll see you guys Friday. Bye.